What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. So today we're covering the ab roller. As a matter of fact, the 5 biggest mistakes that people make when they use this thing, because I've gone on record as saying, I love this. I actually do, and for like 10 bucks you can get one at Walmart and do wonders for your abs if you're doing it right. We gotta cover the 5 mistakes. To do that, we're gonna do what we always do. We gotta show the mistakes. And for that, we bring in the biggest mistake at ATHLEAN-X, Jesse. Welcome to the video.
You want me doing the things wrong again?
You're gonna be doing the things wrong once again.
One condition. I want my new intro.
You got another new intro?
Oh, one word. Laser beams. Roll it. All right, cool. So what do you need me to do with this?
I'll tell you what you should do with this, honestly.
That's harsh.
Can we cut the intros finally?
No, I can't.
Guys, let's show the mistakes here. I will tell you one more thing. If you're someone that's knocking out 100 ab rollouts, you're not doing them right. I promise you, you can't do them well and correctly and do that many. If you're doing well, you're gonna see your numbers are gonna come way down, but the effectiveness is gonna go way up. Let's hit the first mistake. All right, so the first one here is actually very easy to spot and more importantly, to fix. And it has to do with the position of our elbows. And you can look at Jesse and I doing them side by side here. One of them, hint, is doing it wrong, Jesse, and one of them is doing it right. The fact is, guys, you want to have your elbows locked out straight, because as soon as you have even the slightest bit of bend in your elbows, you are transferring the workload away from the core and towards your triceps. We don't want that. If you're trying to develop your abs from doing this exercise, right, it's called an ab rollout, we don't want to be turning it into a tricep rollout. And you have to just focus on making sure that your elbows aren't even this bent, but they're completely straight. A lot of us will start to fatigue as we perform the rep and have that break down. Don't. If you have to stop and reset for a second, do so. Make sure the arms are out there. You'll also benefit your straight arm scapular strength we've talked about so many times on this channel by doing that, because once you get your arms in this locked out position, the leverage will favorably lend itself to creating more force and stability through the shoulder girdle, which is going to transfer right into putting all the work being done where it's supposed to be by your abs. All right, so now speaking of using your arms, guys, it actually gets even worse than that. What happens is when we get out to the end of the ab rollout, how are you pulling yourself back in? I'm going to tell you, if you are someone who is doing the 100 reps I talked about before, I know how you're doing it. I already have an idea because I can see you doing it right now. You're initiating the pull back with your arms instead of letting your arms stay out there and initiating the pull from your torso. Look at Jesse and I side by side once again. You can see that once we get out there, now the initiation of the return is where this all goes wrong, for Jesse at least, because he starts to pull back in. He's literally trying to change the physics of the exercise in his favor by pulling that ab wheel closer to his body and then trying to initiate the trunk curl. That's not what you want to do. Look, if you don't have the strength to do this properly, then just don't go out as far. But don't bastardize the movement by pulling it in halfway and then initiating the trunk curl. You can see here for me, when I get out there, the first move is not with the ab wheel. The first move is with the curl of the trunk. I'm initiating with the abs and pulling back. And you can feel this, guys. Just focus on once you come out there, go to a dead stop if you have to. And once you start to move again, you start from here, not at all moving the wheel back towards you. And I promise you're going to get this right. As a matter of fact, it's going to feed directly into the third and probably largest mistake people make that I'm going to cover right now. All right, so the third one here is a big one. As a matter of fact, it's the most popular mistake people make with the ab wheel. And it's the position of the hips when you're doing the exercise. Look, guys, you want to set up an imaginary line right at your knees. And when you roll out and come back in, you never want to cross it again with your ass. If your ass crosses that imaginary line, then your ass is in trouble because the exercise is being done improperly. Now, I covered this before in a video in depth, and I just recently reposted it here on Instagram, as you can see. And this was picked up by Men's Health and talked about in depth in a recent article. And why? Because it matters. It's very, very important. So when you look at Jesse and I do the exercise side by side, you can instantly see that somebody's doing more work with their abs than the other. And I can give you a hint, it ain't Jesse. The point is that once you do what he's doing, you're taking all the load off of the abs and you're throwing it right on the hip flexors. And our hip flexors certainly don't need the extra work. What we're doing is you want to make sure instead that when the ab wheel gets closer, it gets closer because you're pulling in with a flexion of the trunk, which is one of the functions of the abs. We don't want to just sit ourselves back by bending through the hips and getting hip flexion, which is what he's doing. And once again, the people that claim to do hundreds of reps of this exercise is simply because they're doing this. They're breaking that imaginary line of their knees with their ass. Don't do that anymore, guys. Get out there and come back and keep it up, almost like there's a wall right behind you and you can't touch it. Make sure that all the work is being done by your abs by staying in front of that imaginary line and not touching that wall with your backside. So while we're talking about the hips, let's stick there, okay? Let's talk about the pelvis itself and what we want to do with it, because it's very important. Whenever you're doing any kind of ab training, the position of the pelvis is key. Are you allowing your pelvis to go into anterior tilt, or are you going into posterior tilt? We should see just by the action here that when I go into anterior tilt, I don't work my abs. I actually am stretching them out. When I go into a posterior tilt, I'm actually trunk curling from the bottom up as opposed to the top down, but we're still creating spinal flexion, so that means my abs are working. Well, what you want to do anytime you do an ab rollout, particularly if you want to protect your low back, because a lot of people can screw up their low backs if they get this wrong, is you want to get into a posterior tilt and maintain that from the beginning to the end. And you can see Jesse and I doing something quite different here. Jesse's kind of getting that alternating positioning from the posterior tilt when he's up at the top, and then when he reaches out, mostly because he probably lacks proper ab strength in the first place to support that position when he's fully elongated, he drops down into a pretty severe anterior tilt. That shifting back and forth between anterior and posterior tilt is placing a lot of excess strain and stress on your lumbar spine. Instead, you can see me do it here, where I'm actually going to set up that posterior tilt at the top, and as I roll myself out, I'm still maintaining a tight pelvis. I'm trying to keep that pelvis rotated under. I'm not allowing myself to drop down into that anterior pelvic tilt, and neither should you. And finally, guys, number 5, why are you always going just straight out? I know you probably learned the exercise that way, but have you ever tried it differently? Because if you did, you'd actually feel something quite different in your abs and for the benefit of your abs, because remember, guys, our abs, though they do work in the sagittal plane, and though I do tell you to follow the fibers, we have also discussed how heavily used they are when it comes to controlling and preventing rotation. So why don't you challenge yourself a little bit in rotation? It's very simple to do with an ab wheel. Just don't go straight out. Go a little bit at an angle here, go a little bit at an angle there. Again, Jesse and I are doing the exercise. Here he's doing it right? He's learned some mistakes from what we already corrected here in the video, but he's just going straight out. As opposed to me here, where I'm taking a couple little turns, a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit left. Every time I head off in one direction, I'm creating a little bit of a rotational challenge for my core. And that's a great thing, as we just discussed. So I'm not telling you to start making these really huge turns, which I see people do, and actually shorten the exercise and make it a hell of a lot easier because their travel or the elongation of their core is much more short than it would be if they went out straight. I'm saying just still continue to go out straight and challenge yourself, but make the turns pretty gradual. A little bit left, a little bit right, and you'll get far more out of the exercise. So there you have it, guys. 5 things that you want to make sure that you never do when you're doing your ab rollouts. And even though I know you're going to maybe do a few less repetitions, I promise you the ones you do are going to be that much more effective. And that's what matters at the end of the day. And as I talk about all the time here, guys, it's not just the exercises that you do, it's how you do them that matters. And if we put the science back in strength, everything we do will have much more of an impact when we do them. So if you're looking for programs where we put that all together, you can find them over at ATHLEAN-X.com. In the meantime, if you haven't already done so, click subscribe and turn your notifications so you never miss a video when we do one. And you can always let me know what you want me to cover. I'll do my best to do that for you in the days and weeks ahead. That being said, we're going to see you back here. And why are you back here again?
How cool are those laser beams?
Guys, you are encouraging the hell out of him. Look at what you're creating here. Please, no more laser beams.
What about in the outro?
I'm done.
Are you sure you don't want laser beams in the outro?